The recent China-Africa summit has been a latest news in our polity of late now. Joining me this week on Inside Story to talk about the China-Africa trade relations is Emmanuel Ohiomokhare. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Now, the China-Africa summit now, some have said is a win-win for both countries, while some are of the opinion that it's a win-lose based on Nigeria, China. If we open it that much, the Chinese investors might just come and dump all their products here in Nigeria. But then again, moving on now, let's talk about China and Africa. They just concluded two-day summit with China and African countries. How important do you think this face-to-face session is?
Well, initially, there used to be a servant-master relationship. That's what many people thought, servant-master relationship between China, especially with the fact that China had so much money and Africa was in need of these funds, and China was dumping a lot of money here, but they were also using the opportunity. We had a lot of dumping of Chinese goods that were very fake and all that. So it's been an imbalanced relationship between Africa and China. But the recent summit shows that there's coming to some balance, because actually in negotiations and in trade negotiations, there's really no balance. It depends on what you bring to the table. I believe that the relationship is getting smoother. With 53 heads of states attending the China-Africa summit, and even the UN Secretary General, it's a very, very good step by both continents. China, well, I call China a continent with almost how many, billions of people. It's almost a continent with Africa coming together. And I think with the recent largesse, again, in quote, of the $60 billion by the Chinese president, Xi Jinping, it's very good. It's a very good relationship that is starting and blossoming.
Okay, so at this point in time now, would you consider China a better friend to Africa than the Western?
Oh, yes. That's another angle to the matter. Definitely, there has been a scramble for Africa.
Yes.
There has been a scramble for Africa, and China has shown that as the second largest economy, it is doing well. I remember that China and the US are having a trade war, and of course, the US has been, in the recent years, since Donald Trump, being quite not very friendly with Africa, and China is making use of the opportunity. But Europe is not leaving all guards down, and that's why you see last week, within a span of 3 days, you had the UK Prime Minister and the German Chancellor visiting Nigeria, because Nigeria is the largest economy in Africa, largest market in Africa, one of the most important trading partners for the West in Africa. And so Nigeria is very, very important. But whether China is a better friend or not, I would say time will tell. Okay. Because the relationship is just blossoming. Just like President Muhammadu Buhari said quite recently, he says they have had a strategic partnership with China. But right now they want a comprehensive partnership. So we'll see how this comprehensive partnership, and with this China bringing in money into Africa, will play out in the years to come. But we must say that Africa has really benefited from China in recent years. If you go to Ethiopia, I was in Ethiopia some years ago, about a year or 2 years ago, and I saw their rail system. The rail system was built by Chinese. In fact, in Ethiopia, in Addis Ababa to be precise, they have a Chinese club. A Chinese club where workers who come in from China, come in to have their social time. That's how important China is to them. But you see, I want to see more relationship, more of a balanced relationship with Africa. Like during this summit, Ghana signed an MOU with China to come and build a truck plant where 1,500 trucks will be built within the first 1 year. I mean, those are the kind of relationships I want, where they come and build, because whether we like it or not, China has human resource.
True.
Africa has a lot of human resource. So they are not looking for human resource. They are looking to have where their goods can come in and they can do trade. But we should be able to make use, because like I said, there is never a balanced trade. If you and I come to the table to make trade, to do trade, whether it is balanced or not depends on the way you negotiate and the way I negotiate. So Africa should be going to China and making them bring, because we do not have the resources, they should bring this money to build manufacturing plants, to build plants that will bring in money, that will we can say there is a multiplier effect, not just a matter of trade, of exchange of goods.
Okay. Now you spoke about the scramble for Africa or
Yes.
Nigeria now. In less than a month, we've had visits from the German Chancellor and others, and now with this, with all this happening, do you see it as a sudden scramble for Africa and Nigeria?
I don't know whether it's a sudden scramble. I just see that within the Muhammadu Buhari administration, there has been a blossoming relationship between Nigeria and China. China has been working its way to Africa. It has been working its way. So I can't say it is sudden. And I'll tell you why it has been working its way. During the Goodluck Jonathan era in Nigeria, for instance, you know China has this one China policy. The one China policy is that you know there are other Chinese provinces like Taiwan, like Tibet, like Hong Kong. Now the one China's policy says that you must only recognize China as the only Chinese country, because China believes that Tibet, Hong Kong, Taiwan, they are all under China. But those countries belong, they say they are all independent. Now, during the Goodluck Jonathan era, there was a very liberal attitude to this one China policy. There was no straight up attitude to it. So we had Taiwan, Taiwan was trying to blossom its business with Nigeria and other African countries, because I think it's only Cote d'Ivoire and Gambia that are really, and probably South Africa, are really welcoming Taiwan. Nigeria Taiwan was gradually warming its way into the Nigerian heart. But when Muhammadu Buhari came in, he came with a stance, and probably he saw the help that, which is why I can boldly say that China during the Goodluck Jonathan era was very slippery and lackadaisical in its aid towards Nigeria, in giving aid loans, because Nigeria had not embraced fully its one China policy. They were still romancing with Taiwan. Okay. Taiwan had an office in Abuja, and it was just a matter of time before that office blossomed. It was called a trade mission, but it was just a matter of time before that office blossomed to a full-fledged embassy. Taiwan was able to sponsor some Nigerians, had scholarship programs for some Nigerians. I know people and have relations even too who benefited from such scholarship programs. But when the Muhammadu Buhari administration came in and saw that they needed a lot of help, especially when there was a dearth of resources, there was no money to work, and they needed loans, and so they went scamping for loans. They went to AFDB, went to the World Bank, and went to China. And so, with China, China gave them the condition: you have to make sure this our one China policy stands. So stop romancing with Taiwan. And within weeks, Taiwan was told to vacate Abuja, told to go to the trade mission in Lagos and set up their trade mission in Lagos, and a lot of other things happened. And so you can see that it wasn't just a sudden scramble.
Okay.
And so from that point, China was sure. And you can see Nigeria embracing now more of that one China policy, with the president saying we don't want a strategic partnership again, we want a comprehensive partnership. With a comprehensive partnership means in fact, Taiwan shouldn't even be in this country, because you don't have any right to trade with Taiwan as an entity. So you can see that it was not necessarily a scramble. Yes, the fight to get Africa may be more now, especially because of his trade wars with the United States, because they will want to show. Don't forget that if China is able to have a smooth relationship and a blossoming relationship with Africa, there is a possibility that Chinese, of course, Chinese economy will become the largest economy in the world. They are currently the second largest, next to the United States of America. There is a possibility that that Chinese economy will blossom and become the largest economy in the world. And of course, you know that the world currency is the dollar. Some countries, like in Africa, South Africa, and Nigeria, have just begun to embrace the yuan. And so there's a possibility that the dollar can be overtaken in the world market by the yuan as the major world currency. So it's a lot of it's not just a matter of a struggle for economic power. It's a struggle for trade power and a struggle for political power.
Okay.
World and global economic and political power.
Okay, now let's talk about the loans now.
Yeah.
Now, the China loans is against that of development agencies now. How does these loans differ from that of the World Bank?
How do these loans differ? Well, I know that the China loan, 20 billion of that China loan is supposed to come in as credit. 15 billion is supposed to come in as with several conditions, and there's 5 billion for debt servicing and all that. So the 60 billion has different components with it. So how is it different? Well, maybe the World Bank is a development body, is a development bank, and the World Bank have more the years of tenure of loans are usually longer, and the interests let me not be very specific. I don't know. It depends on the loans. You cannot say you compare two loans together, except there are bases for comparison. But it depends on the loans. You cannot say that like this $328 million that was given to Nigeria for the ICT infrastructure backbone. You cannot compare it probably with a 500 million naira dollar loan that is given to help probably the agriculture infrastructure in Nigeria, maybe through the Fadama processes and all that. So you cannot compare two loans together, but those kind of two loans together. The truth about it is that China, for Nigeria to be able to go and negotiate a loan, like I say, you have to look at, when you come to a table to negotiate a process, it depends on what you bring to the table. I don't know what is I don't know what the details of this $328 million. But don't forget that this is not the first loan we are taking from. We have an Abuja light rail working right now. It's based on a loan from China. We have an Abuja Kaduna rail working. Is based on loans from China. These loans don't come in always as cash. They come in probably as partnership, a partnership between Nigeria and this. Okay, we do this and you do that. Okay, we are able to recoup our money within this period of time and all that. That's where probably the World Bank is different from China. China is more where China comes in. It's in a more active sense, like in the railway system. Like you know that the light rail, which is the first in West Africa, I would say, in Abuja here, is being managed by the Chinese company, the CCECCC or something like that. And of course, there is an arrangement for the China to recoup its funds for a period of time. The World Bank wouldn't do that kind of arrangement to say, to recoup its funds. They will give you the money and you are going to pay within this certain point. They don't come, yes, they monitor, but they don't come and say, okay, we take the funds and you take this percentage and we are recouping. So that's basically, when you look at the World Bank and China, the way they give loans, that's basically what you'll be looking at.
Okay, now let's talk about the $5 billion project. Now, so far, the president has said
in the last 3 years.
Yes, Nigeria has benefited to the level of $5 billion project. Now, how feasible or important are these projects to our economy?
Very feasible and very important. The way you are talking of the $5 billion, I've just mentioned some of them. The Abuja Light Rail is part of it. The Kaduna Abuja Kaduna Railway, which was, these are probably funds that, yes, they will say they started during the Jonathan era, but I've told you why China may have backpedaled during the Jonathan era. But I also want you to know that these things didn't come in necessarily as money or cash per se. But when you quantify them, at the end of the day, you need to quantify them and say, okay, this is worth what we have gotten. So I believe that by the time they are broken down, but we can see some of them, we can see the tangibility of some of them on ground. You can see the railways working. You can see the Ibadan, Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, Lagos-Ibadan Railway coming on stream very soon. Work is ongoing. So I do not think that they are just fizzle or just something of imagination. It's just for the government to say, okay, now we have said 5 billion naira. Of this 5 billion naira, this is what went to this, this is what went to this, and this is what went to this. And that is where the government managers, like I've said in many programs before, the government managers need to be on their toes. When a president comes and says, my government has benefited $5 billion from the Chinese, it is left for you not to leave Nigerians and for Nigerians to begin to think back when the president sent for approval to the National Assembly that want to take loan from China, or when the president signed an MOU want to take loan from China. No, you come out and say, from this $5 billion the president has said, this is where this thing has gone to. This is the breakdown. Then Nigerians will be able to judge. That is where a lot of the government, media managers are very lazy and lackadaisical in trying to, attack issues when they come up.
Okay, now let's talk about the currency swap deal.
Yes.
Now, it's one of the high profile of the Nigerian-China relations. Now, how relevant do you think this deal is to the Nigerian economy?
Oh, so relevant. You must know that China is it's Nigeria's biggest trading partner. 22% of Nigeria's trade is done with China. Okay. That is, you can look at a whole country taking 22%, then the rest of the world taking the whole 78% of this thing. So it is so important. And you know that Nigeria's, I told you about the world currency, which is the dollar. Mm-hmm. Nigeria trades with the rest of the world in dollar. Now, if I go to China, or if I go to China, and before this deal, if I go to China and I want to do business in China, I want to buy goods in China, before I'm going to China, I'm changing my money to the dollar. And when I go to China and I want to buy the goods and they give me the cost in yuan, I will now change my money to yuan to pay. Or let's say they give me the cost in dollars. They have changed their yuan to dollars, which increases costs. Then I pay in dollars in a higher form. But so when you have a dollar to a yuan to a naira exchange, there are costs involved. So, but when you remove the middleman and have a yuan to a naira exchange, there is a reduction of costs. So you can see how good it is for the businessman. But you see, just like the dollar, whether you like it or not, the fact that the dollar is a world currency and many Nigerians were doing a lot of importation and export, it was abused.
We're talking about the currency swap deal. Like it or not, it's something that's really gotten my interest, especially the fact that we're now going to be trading Nigeria to the yuan and at lower cost, and it's really going to be perfect for the average Igbo businessmen.
I don't know why you call it Igbo businessman, but every Nigerian is going to be good for every average Nigerian who trades. Every average Nigerian. Yes, the Igbo businessman, who is the Jew of Nigeria, is the one who is very much involved in trade in China.
Yes.
And I was still talking about the process.
Yes.
And I said, you go to China, you open an account in a Chinese corresponding bank, and go to where you have your goods. Oh, okay, this is what you want to buy. Great. They give you the cost. Come back to Nigeria. Go to any of the 4 settlement banks, 3 or 4 settlement banks. Raise a letter of credit, a Form M, with a letter of credit, based on the invoice that has been sent. Let's say you don't even need to go to China, but at least you have an account there. Okay. Based on the invoice that has been sent and all that. You go to your bank and say, okay, now this is what I want to invest in. Please calculate it. This is the amount in renminbi or in yuan. And you pay the naira equivalent. Because, of course, that is a determined market rate. You pay the naira equivalent. When you pay the money, your business is done. No, you just have to pay the money by transfer. Transfer to the settlement bank. Say, okay, this is the naira equivalent. This is the naira equivalent. This is this thing, and you transfer. I was watching a report, and somebody was complaining that a lady was complaining it's not good for informal business. If you are ready to do international trade, then you should be ready to do it formally. This process is to remove the fact of carrying cash. Nobody will handle cash, and we must know how important this is. Nigeria, about $2.5 billion, or 4.4% of Nigeria's external reserves is now in the yuan. And this money, the CBN does bi-weekly auctions. The bi-weekly auctions are done by the settlement banks to determine the rates and all that. And of course, with the rates, you do your business, it's normal. Costs are lower. Okay. Then it reduces the pressure on the dollar. Remember that it's all a matter of demand and supply. When there is a pressure or demand on the dollar, the demand is more than the supply, then the prices of dollar against the naira goes up. When there is less demand, imagine if there are less people who are importing or exporting, and there is less demand on that pressure on that dollar. So the supply can go around and the prices will begin to go down as much as possible. Yes, it's a 3-year deal. People are asking, what if this money finishes? There is an opportunity for the Central Bank of Nigeria to renew the deal with the People's Bank of China after the 3 years. There's an opportunity if the deal goes well. And I believe the thing will go well. But the good thing is that there will be a reduction in the prices between the dollar and the naira, the exchange. If this continues and this succeeds, I don't see why the naira shouldn't be 200 naira to the dollar in the next 5 years.
We'll look forward to seeing.
We'll look forward to it. We just pray that Nigerians are manipulators.
True.
It's not good to talk bad about your country, but you shouldn't. You cannot ignore the fact that there are very wicked and evil people who are being manipulated by people who do not have the interest of the country at heart and are not necessarily Nigerians. This is where some international politicking comes into play. Because you get people, and most of them are usually influential Nigerians, are being used by international people, international countries, to try and subvert the country, the trade or country in Nigeria, or probably one against one government, and they say, okay, now we're going to use you to be able to subvert this so that people will not be able to praise this government, for instance, for this work well done.
Okay, now let's talk about, still on the loans now. Former World Bank executive Obieze Kwesili, now recently on Twitter, recently expressed reservations over China loans. Now, is there any need for concerns?
I don't know from what basis Obieze-Kwesili is expressing reservations. She has to give the basis. You know what I've read on social media, and maybe what people have said, have been very base. Like what the former vice president of the country, Atiku Abubakar, said, comparing the $322 million Abacha loot to the $328 million. He's asking, why would you take, why would you share $322 million Abacha loot to the poorest of the poor and go and take a loan of $328 million? I mean, that is talking, for someone as high as the former vice president of this country, that's talking very base. I mean, you should be talking. There should be an elevated way of speaking when you have come to an exalted position of the former vice president and you are even aspiring to be president of this country. Not everything is about politics. Some economics are not about politics. Yes, I'm not praising this government that it has done excellently well in any area. But what I'm saying is that when you are analyzing issues, be very objective. What is the issue of the $322 million money Abacha loot? The $322 million Abacha loot was gotten from the Swiss government under conditions in a Swiss court with World Bank officials present. It was the conditions that were given. It has to be used for a project that is World Bank monitored or supervised. And and the Nigerian government thought to themselves, they had to decide there and then. We have to look for an existing project that, of course, you have the National Social Safety Net, which they started, was it last year or so, where they said they were giving money to the poorest of the poor. Whether the money reaches to the poorest of the poor is another different matter. But I'm talking about the way the monies came in. Now, you had conditions for releasing the 322. And so they said, okay, we have this National Social Safety Net where we are giving some monies to some people. Let this money come in as like a counterpart funding and come and add to what we already have. And we already have this thing in the budget. We already budgeted for it. So this money can come and fill in the place. Because remember, a budget is an estimate. Sure. It's not necessary that you have the money. So if you say you budgeted $500 million for this, and then you get $322 million, great. So you know that at least 70% of that money is covered. And so you do it. So people should be and some people say, what right? Why should they be sharing money to this thing? Whether they share it for political reasons is not my problem. Social safety or social, the fact that social investment is very important in a developing and very poor country. Remember, we have about 87 million Nigerians that are poor in this country. Very, very poor, according to the UN standards. And you have money you are sharing to old people. Well, I'm not judging whether they have done the work well. I'm judging the basis in which that one was the basis in which it was adjudged to have been done. Now, you have the $328 million, which is for ICT infrastructure. Why would you go and take the $322 million that you collected? Every budget has its line. You collected for one purpose, you now via it to another purpose because you say you don't want Nigeria to take loan. This $328 million, remember, it is part of the $60 billion that Jinping is giving to Africa. It's not only that, Nigeria is going to be helped to build its hydroelectric power project, about 3,050 megawatts of the Mambila hydroelectric power, still by the Chinese. So, on what basis is Obieze-Kwesili and other Nigerians expressing fears? Okay, some other people have expressed fears that why should we take loans? We are taking too much loans. What is the loan? What is the loan ratio to our GDP? It's still not as high as some other African countries. I don't know the exact figures, but I'm sure it's not up to 60% of our GDP. So we're still on a safe zone. And then you do not have the resources. What is wrong in taking a loan to... I belong to the school of thought that as long as you use the loan to build... Because people say they are taking loans for the future. Who is going to pay in future? But when you make the loan, for instance, this railway, you and I know that will have an excruciating transport issue in this country. Imagine railway works in this country. Don't you think, or don't you know, if it is well implemented, that it will be, the profits will be so high as what the telecoms or the telcos are getting now, even higher than what the telcos are getting, because everybody enters transport. I went on the Abuja light rail when it was still on test run. It's test road, and they said they're going to be charging 1,000 naira. When I went on that light rail, from my journey from central area to the airport and back, I couldn't sit down because it was full. Well, it was a test run, but I can tell you, I've gone from Abuja to Kaduna. There are times I don't get seats. I get times some people don't get seats because people pay. People want to travel. The people see this as an alternative. People see this as a safe way. The Abuja Kaduna road, of course, we know that there are a lot of troubles there, kidnappers, people who armed robbers, assassins, and all that on that road. Now, when you have a train system that works, it's generating funds. When you have a power system that works, and people will pay, it has been proven that Nigerians will pay if they have power. So, in time, the monies will be paid.
Okay.
And especially if this PPP arrangement remains, forget about, as far as I'm concerned, I don't believe in government running business. The government has no business in running business. Or government has no business in business. Government should be a regulator. So if you have the PPP, you have the Chinese people running this thing side by side with you. And they are monitoring the funds. They are taking their money as they are going. They are taking their money. Of course, it will be easily paid.
To be easily paid. Now, before we go now, 2 questions, actually 3, but first 2. I want to merge the 2 questions together now. Looking at this China-Africa or China-Nigeria relationship now, who do you think will benefit more? And should the West be concerned about China's romance with Africa?
China, Nigeria, who will benefit more? China will definitely benefit more.
Okay. Why do you say that?
China will benefit more because China, they are the ones that have the higher power here. They have the funds. So they have the higher power. So you cannot say that Nigeria will have an equal share or Africa will have an equal share of what. But on the long run, if China continues to be honest with its dealings with Africa, because this 2-day summit, you will be shocked at how many MOUs were signed with different African countries. I know Rwanda signed something on mining. I know one other country, it's South Africa, is talking about trading. Nigeria is talking about ICT infrastructure backbone. Ghana is signing a truck equipment plant. So, at the long run, the truth about it is, Africa will benefit immensely. But China, they are not giving. Let me tell you the truth. If you go to China, a lot of Chinese people are complaining. They're complaining about the funds that are being given to Africa. They do not believe that the government should be giving funds to Africa. Because they say, a lot of them don't even, just like we don't understand, a lot of Nigerians don't understand the econometrics of why a Nigeria is going to be taking loans from a China. Many Chinese don't understand the econometrics of why China will give loans to Africa and give so much large sums to Africa. So, China will benefit on the short run, but on the long run, if it is well managed, well implemented, sincere leaders, especially from Africa, Africa will benefit.
So do you think the West should be concerned?
Well, should the West be concerned? When you talk about international politics, international economic power, the West should be concerned. But I really don't care if the West is concerned or not, as long as Africa is developed. Because the truth about it is that the West had their chance. But the West didn't want to get their hands stained. And the West were too involved in so much corruption with African leaders. And that is why a lot of Africa wasn't developed.
Okay. Now, finally, how best, or your recommendations now, how best do you think we can handle the Nigeria-China trade relations?
How best? Well, we should just continue. Sincerity of purpose, really. Sincerity of purpose, sincerity of the implementators. Okay. Sincerity of leadership. Political will. Political will. You know, I was very upset because I had a kind of a good relationship with Taiwan. And the Taiwanese ambassador then, he was called, even though he was just really a trade mission, head of trade mission. But the Taiwanese ambassador was a very good friend. And I was beneficiary of Taiwanese, one of Taiwanese exchange programs. So I was quite upset when the Muhammadu Buhari administration cut off with the Taiwanese government and all that. But now I have changed my mind. Why? Because I was upset for selfish reasons, because I also knew that I had a lot to benefit with my relationship with Taiwan if we continued this relationship. But then, if I was to put Nigeria's interest over my personal and selfish interests, then I will consider the fact that what is Taiwan's economic power compared to China?
Okay.
And I will say, I'm very happy that Muhammadu Buhari administration had the willpower, the political will to say no more to Taiwan. We are going with the one China policy.
Okay.
So sincerity of leaders, political will. In 2019, we have another elections coming up. Whether we like it or not, we cannot remove our politics from our economy or from our business or from our trade. We need to be able to, we need a government, even if this present administration is not going to come back, we need a government that will be sincere to look at these things on the table and not come with so many book knowledge. But look at what is on ground, look at the reality, and sincerely look at it in the future.
Okay.
How are we going to move on from here? Are we going to continue in this state? If we're going to tweak a lot of some things, let them tweak it to our favor. That is what will make our relationship with China a win-win situation, just like you started.
All right, thank you very much for coming on the show.